I drove 10 hours through an autumn storm, with fibromyalgia flaring in my wrists and shoulders, carrying a restored photo album carefully wrapped in the trunk so it wouldn't get damaged. It was meant to surprise my younger sister, Vanessa, on her 50th birthday, a gesture I had planned with the hope of rekindling the bond that had been slipping away between us. At 60, I've learned that family means showing up, even when the road is long and the heart is heavy. My name is Catherine Walsh, a retired physician, and I live quietly with my husband Tom in our stone house in Burlington, Vermont, where memories of our mother Helen still linger, like her shawl draped over the back of her favorite armchair. Vanessa and I haven't been close in recent years, though I pretended not to notice. Our weekly calls got shorter. Her tone would sharpen whenever I brought up visiting or the shared account where we kept Mom's inheritance. "Life in Asheville is crazy, Kathy," she'd say. Yet on Instagram, there were posts of fine dining and last-minute getaways. Now 50, divorced, and raising 16-year-old Olivia, Vanessa lives like there's no tomorrow. Designer clothes, impulsive home renovations, bursts of joy followed by crying spells. I often blamed myself. Maybe I was too serious, too controlling, the older sister trying too hard to be the mother I'd promised ours I would be. Still, I sent Christmas cards, boxes of homemade cookies, birthday checks for Olivia that grew in size with my hope for a warm embrace. The album had taken me weeks. I had carefully restored old photographs, Vanessa and me at the lake with Mom, her with braids at age 7, our mother smiling in the garden. Each page, arranged slowly with aching fingers, was a piece of our shared history. I woke up before dawn the morning of the trip, double-checking the pages while my coffee went cold. The inheritance had always remained untouched on my side, saved for some emergency that never came. Tom and I lived comfortably thanks to my career, but Vanessa, she treated it like a bottomless pit. "You're driving alone?" Joan asked, when I told her the plan. She was trimming roses next door, her glasses fogged by the morning mist. We've been neighbors for 25 years, ever since she moved in after her divorce. She knew Vanessa as a child. She was there when Mom got sick and brought soup when fibromyalgia pinned me to bed. "It's just the highway, Joan, not the Oregon Trail," I joked, gently placing the album in the trunk, cushioned between pillows. "My fibromyalgia and I have an understanding," she sighed, the way she did when she knew arguing was pointless. "At least take your phone. Call me when you get there." "Yes, Mom," I teased, though she's only 2 years older. I left at 4:30 a.m., suitcase packed with my best coat and the lavender perfume Vanessa used to love when we were young. My travel mug filled the car with the scent of cinnamon coffee. The radio played the oldies Mom and I used to sing in the kitchen. Rain started just a few miles out of Burlington, thick drops tapping the windshield like a nervous confession. By the time I reached the interstate, it was a downpour. The wipers struggled. My wrists throbbed with the rhythm of pain. "You should have listened to Joan," I muttered, shifting my hands on the wheel, already stiff from the humidity. Fibromyalgia always worsens in this kind of weather. But what were a few aches and some rain compared to the look on Vanessa's face when I showed up unannounced? I imagined her wide eyes, her hands over her mouth, maybe even that girlish laugh she still had when truly happy. "Kathy, what are you doing here?" And then the hug, a real one, the kind I hadn't felt in longer than I cared to admit. The highway stretched ahead, vanishing into curtains of rain. Trucks passed, sending up walls of water that blinded me for seconds at a time. I slowed to 45, leaning forward slightly, as if those extra inches could help me see better. The album was secure, my proof of love, of hope. At a rest stop in West Virginia, I groaned as I stepped out, my shoulders stiff with pain. Under the fluorescent lights of the restroom, I rubbed in some analgesic cream, the chemical scent mixing with the dry air. A young attendant watched me, concern in her eyes. "Long drive?" "Halfway there," I answered, managing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. "Storm's supposed to get worse," she said, handing me a paper towel. Might want to wait it out, but birthdays don't wait. I'd timed my arrival to be just before the dinner party Vanessa had mentioned planning. I hadn't told her I was coming. Surprise was part of the plan, my way of cutting through the polite distance that had settled between us. Back on the road, I turned up the heat to chase away the chill in my bones. The dashboard clock read 9:47. 5 more hours if the storm didn't get worse. I swallowed a painkiller dry, wincing at the bitterness, and let my mind drift to birthdays past. Vanessa at 6, eyes sparkling as she opened the paint set Mom and I had put together. At 12, blowing out candles on a heart-shaped cake. At 16, wearing the necklace I'd saved for months to buy, only to find out later she had hidden it because it was too simple. When did it all change? Maybe after Mom died, and grief made me overprotective. Or when Vanessa married, then divorced, and my calls became a burden. Or maybe when Olivia was born, and the promise to take care of them both became a weight I carried alone. As I crossed into North Carolina, the rain thickened, tapping the roof like impatient fingers. A truck ahead of me skidded, forcing traffic to slow to a crawl. Hazard lights blinked through the haze. My GPS recalculated, adding 45 minutes. Still, my resolve was its own kind of pain relief. I'd worked 36-hour shifts to save lives, braved floods to visit Vanessa in the ER, drove through blizzards to get Olivia to school when Vanessa couldn't. A storm and aching joints wouldn't stop me now. Asheville appeared through the rain, like a lighthouse, exit signs with familiar names guiding me in. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, lipstick faded, hair flattened by humidity. It didn't matter. I'd freshen up before I knocked. The promise I made to Mom, take care of Nessa and Olivia, was louder than the pain, louder than the rain. The rain had settled into a light drizzle by the time I reached Vanessa's neighborhood in Asheville, the glow of modern homes shining against the darkening sky. My body ached after 10 hours on the road, the fibromyalgia pulsing through my shoulders and wrists. But the photo album, still safely tucked on the passenger seat, kept me focused. I parked on the street, not in the driveway, hoping to preserve the surprise of my arrival. My raincoat was soaked, water trailing down my neck as I walked up to the front door, the heavy album cradled in my arms. Vanessa's house, with its wide windows and perfectly styled porch, flaunted the kind of extravagance that Mom's inheritance had paid for. The front door was slightly ajar, the way she always left it when expecting guests. Guests for her birthday, though not me. I stepped into the entryway, the polished wood floor reflecting the warm light from a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. The air smelled of red wine and something baking, maybe the dinner Vanessa had mentioned hosting with friends. The house was unmistakably hers. Designer furniture, abstract paintings on the walls, shelves lined with photos from exotic trips, but not one of the two of us. Not even one of Mom. My wet shoes left faint marks on the floor, and I paused, the album's weight anchoring me. Should I call her name? Say surprise? Or just walk in with a smile, as if the years and distance could be erased with one kind gesture? Laughter floated from the living room, mingling with the clink of glasses and animated voices. My heart sped up at the thought of seeing Vanessa, maybe even Olivia, smiling when they saw me. I walked slowly, my steps muffled by the plush rug, rehearsing what I might say. Happy birthday, Nessa. Maybe, or just a simple, hi. But before I could decide, I heard Vanessa's voice, sharp and tipsy, slice through the air like a slap. Kathy called again today. 4th time this week. Always with that superior tone, like I'm some idiot who can't handle money. God, who does she think she is? The queen of the inheritance? A cruel laugh followed from a woman I didn't recognize. Seriously, Nessa? She's still trying to control you? Why doesn't she just leave you alone already? My chest tightened. The air caught in my throat, I froze where I stood, the album trembling in my hands. "She's a burden!" Vanessa spat, her voice laced with venom, every word a blow. "She thinks she's Mom, always telling me how to live, how to raise Olivia. You know what I want for my birthday? For her to disappear, to leave me alone with her rules and lectures. I'm done being smothered by that meddling old woman." The woman laughed, loud and harsh, a sound that shattered what little was left of my heart. "Wow, Nessa, tell it like it is. Let her drown in her holiness while you finally live your life." Their laughter rang out again, sharp as broken glass, like my existence was nothing but dead weight. My sister, the one I had comforted through her divorce, whose bills I had paid with the very inheritance she burned through, had just stabbed me with words that would never leave me. The album felt like it was burning in my arms. The photos I had so carefully restored now seemed like a cruel joke. I should have turned around, slipped out unnoticed. But something stronger pulled me forward, into the living room. Vanessa was on the couch, wine glass in hand, her blonde hair messy, her eyes lit with a fury I'd never seen. Her friend, in a red dress, was laughing, head thrown back. My footstep creaked the floor, and Vanessa's eyes found mine. The laughter stopped. Her wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor, the wine spreading like blood. "Kathy," she whispered, her face pale, as if I were a ghost. The other woman choked on her breath, eyes wide, hand covering her mouth. The silence was suffocating, thick with the weight of everything I'd just heard. Vanessa rose unsteadily, the glass shards crunching beneath her heels. "Kathy, you weren't—" Her voice faltered, her eyes searching desperately for an excuse that didn't exist. I said nothing. I didn't cry. My eyes locked onto hers, and I saw not just guilt, but the truth. She meant every word. With shaking hands, I placed the album on the coffee table, right there among the wine glasses and snacks. The tissue paper wrapping was damp from the rain, like an offering no one wanted. The friend mumbled something, maybe about cleaning the wine, but no one moved. I turned, my wet shoes leaving a trail behind me as I walked back toward the entryway. "Kathy, please!" Vanessa's voice cracked as she stumbled behind me. "Don't go, I didn't mean— Kathy!" But I was already at the door, the rain welcoming me like an old friend. I shut the car door hard, cutting off her voice, my hands trembling as I turned the key in the ignition. The rain came down harder, the windshield fogging over, though not as much as my vision. In the rearview mirror, I saw Vanessa on the porch, arms outstretched, a silhouette of a sister I no longer recognized. The album stayed behind, like the hope that had brought me here. As I drove, Mom's words echoed in my mind. Take care of Nessa and Olivia. But a cold clarity cut through me, sharp as the wind. Maybe taking care of them meant, first and foremost, taking care of myself. The highway opened up before me, uncertain, yes, but the first road I had ever chosen without looking back. The rain had stopped by the time I pulled into a motel just outside Asheville. The neon sign buzzed in the darkness, casting flickering shadows on the wet pavement. My body was begging for relief, fibromyalgia burning through every joint like embers under my skin. But my mind was on fire, consumed by Vanessa's words. She's a curse. Get her out. That meddling old woman suffocates me. Every syllable was a blade, cutting deeper than the physical pain. But it was also a revelation, exposing the truth I'd been avoiding for years. My sister didn't need me, not like I needed her, or the idea that we were still family. I parked beneath the dull glow of a streetlight, the engine falling silent, with a soft sigh. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, the cold leather pressing against my feverish skin. The album was left behind, abandoned on Vanessa's table, but the promise I'd made to Mom, take care of Nessa and Olivia, still held me in its grip, even as I fought to break free. Inside the motel room, the air was thick, heavy with the scent of mildew and cheap disinfectant that scratched at my throat. The bed creaked beneath me, the rough blanket scraping against my trembling hands. Silence pressed in, broken only by the sputter of a broken fan in the corner. I picked up my phone, the screen casting a pale light across the room. One missed call from Tom, my husband. A voicemail. "Kathy, it's 9. Did you make it to Asheville? Call me, I'm worried." His voice, steady but gentle, tightened something in my chest. I didn't call him back, not yet. I didn't need comfort. I needed clarity. I opened the bank app, something I rarely did, trusting that Mom's inheritance, kept in a joint account, was safe under our shared management. I had never touched my portion, always cautious, saving it for emergencies that never came. Vanessa, on the other hand, made withdrawals I explained away as necessities: the house, the bills, Olivia's education. But her venom-laced words in that living room sparked a doubt I could no longer ignore. With hesitant fingers, I pulled up the account statement, and what I saw made my heart stall. Frequent withdrawals, some outrageous, others small but relentless, were draining the inheritance like sand through an hourglass. Purchases from designer boutiques, flights to places like Miami and Cancun, a kitchen renovation with imported tiles, subscriptions to luxury spas, even a payment to a lifestyle consultant, whatever that meant. There were no school tuition payments for Olivia, no investments, nothing that hinted at planning for the future. In just a few years, Vanessa had burned through a significant part of what Mom had left behind, while I, blinded by my promise to protect her, had believed her excuses about emergencies. My stomach churned. I wasn't just sick over the financial betrayal. I was sick with the knowledge that Olivia, the 16-year-old girl I'd sworn to protect, was being robbed of her grandmother's legacy. I closed my eyes. The fibromyalgia, now a distant hum compared to the rage rising inside me. How had I been so naive? Every time Vanessa asked for a little withdrawal to cover something, every story about being tight on money, while posting photos on yachts and at fancy dinners, I believed her, because I wanted to believe in the sister I once held in my arms, the one I consoled after her divorce. But the woman who called me a curse? She wasn't that sister anymore. She was a stranger. A reckless stranger burning through the inheritance like it was a toy. The promise I made to Mom, take care of Nessa and Olivia, echoed in my mind. But then another voice, my own, finally rose above the noise. And what about me? Who's taking care of me? Who's protecting what's left of me? I stayed awake all night, staring at the cracked ceiling of the motel, reliving every call, every check I signed, every time I put Vanessa's needs above my own. When dawn painted the sky in pale gray, my decision was made. I called Susan, my lawyer and a college friend who'd handled our finances since Tom and I bought the house in Burlington. I answered while sipping bitter motel coffee, the taste as harsh as my mood. I told her everything: the trip, Vanessa's words, the devastation I saw in those bank records. Susan listened in silence, her calm breath steady through the phone. Then she said, with the blunt honesty of someone who's watched families fall apart for less, "Kathy, you have the power to stop this. The account is joint, but you can freeze it and redirect the funds. What do you want?" My voice came out steady, surprising me. "I want to protect what's left for Olivia. And I want Vanessa to stop draining the money." Susan promised to draw up the paperwork and recommended a meeting with the bank to make everything legally airtight. "And what about you, Kathy?" she added, her voice softening. "What do you want for yourself?" The question caught me off guard, but the answer came like lightning. I want to live. I want to stop sacrificing myself. I drove back to Burlington the next day, the highway dry beneath a clear sky, the weight of betrayal replaced by a resolve I hadn't felt since my hospital days, making life and death calls for others, never for myself. At home, Tom met me at the door, his brown eyes full of concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, pulling me into an embrace that smelled of coffee and the soap we'd used for years. I told him everything. Vanessa's betrayal, the withdrawals, the decision I'd made. He held my hands, the lines on his face softening as he listened. "You did what had to be done, Kathy. So what now? What's next for us?" I smiled, a real smile, one I hadn't felt in days. "Italy, Tom. And a bookstore in Mom's name. We're going to use my portion of the inheritance." He laughed, surprised but delighted, and nodded like he always did when I set my mind on something new. The next week, I met Susan in her office in Burlington, a modest room overlooking Lake Champlain, papers stacked neatly on her desk. The bank? Manager, a middle-aged man named Richard, joined us by video call, his metallic voice echoing in the room. I explained everything, showing the printed statements, each line proof of Vanessa's recklessness. We froze the joint account and moved the remaining balance into a trust fund in Olivia's name, earmarked for college and future needs. Strict clauses barred Vanessa from accessing a penny. My untouched portion of the inheritance was transferred to a separate account, ready to fund our trip to Italy and a bookstore I would call Helen's Corner, a tribute to Mom. Susan reviewed every document, her glasses catching the light as she pointed out protective clauses. "Vanessa may contest this," she warned, tucking a gray strand of hair behind her ear. "Are you ready for that fight?" I nodded, knowing full well it would be more brutal than any night shift in the ER. The fight came 4 days later. Vanessa called, her voice exploding through the phone like a storm. "Kathy, you selfish witch, how dare you freeze the account? That money is mine too. I need it. Don't you get that?" Her voice wavered between rage and desperation, each word laced with the instability I knew too well. I tried to stay calm, just like I did with patients in crisis. "Olivia's money is safe in a trust for college. The rest is no longer yours to burn through." She screamed, her voice cracking. "You have no right. I hate you, Kathy. You always wanted to control me, humiliate me. I'll sue. I'll tell everyone." "How cruel you are!" Her accusations came like fists, each one trying to crack the wall I'd finally built. But I didn't budge. "Do what you need to do, Vanessa. The trust is for Olivia. You spent your share. It's over." I hung up while she was still shouting, my heart racing, not with guilt, but with a freedom I didn't know I could feel. That night, sitting on the porch with Tom under a star-dotted Burlington sky, I felt something new. Lightness. The promise I made to Mom didn't mean I had to lose myself for Vanessa. It meant protecting Olivia, but also giving myself permission to live. I sorted through the trust papers at the kitchen table, each signature a line drawn between the past and the future. Italy was waiting, with vineyards and sunsets I'd only seen in pictures. The bookstore, with its imagined shelves and quiet corners, would be a home for stories like the ones Mom used to read us. I looked over at Tom, flipping through an Italian travel guide, and smiled. The road ahead was Mindanao, and I was finally ready to walk it, not as the sister who carried it all, but as the woman who finally chose what to carry. 6 months after Asheville, I found myself at a cafe in Florence, the aroma of espresso blending with the warmth of the Tuscan sun, as Tom sketched an impromptu map on a napkin, planning our next stop along the Amalfi Coast. The pain I once carried felt distant, softened by the freedom of being so far from Burlington and the weight I'd left behind. At 60, after decades of setting aside dreams to be the responsible sister, I was finally using my share of the inheritance to live, truly, live. The trip to Italy, something Tom and I had planned after freezing the joint account, was our first step. 3 months of vineyards, museums, and long, slow dinners. A gift I gave myself after saving for emergencies that never came. Back in Burlington, before we left, I had started sketching the outline of a new life. The idea for a bookstore, Helen's Corner, named after Mom, was born during porch conversations with Tom as we sipped tea and dreamed of a space filled with books and community. It wasn't real yet. The contracts were with Susan, my attorney, and the rented storefront waited for our return. But the trip came first, a priority Tom insisted on. "You deserve this, Kathy," he said, booking flights while I hesitated, worried about expenses and the usual what-ifs. He was right. In Rome, we learned to make fresh pasta, our hands covered in flour as we laughed like newlyweds. In Siena, I painted my first watercolor, a shaky horizon of hills that I kept as proof that I could still try new things. Each day, in Italy, was a brushstroke, helping me rebuild the woman I had forgotten I could be. Tom was my safe place. In Florence, as we strolled across the Ponte Vecchio, he took my hand and pointed out jewelry stores glinting in the sun. "For the bookstore opening," he joked, gesturing to a necklace I'd never buy for myself. I smiled, knowing the real gift was him, his steady presence, the way he planned each day with joy, balancing my need to control with his love for spontaneity. Back at the cafe, he folded the napkin, eyes bright. "Amalfi tomorrow?" he asked. I nodded, the warmth of the espresso in my hands. The fibromyalgia was still there, a gentle reminder that my body had limits, but my spirit didn't. Susan kept in touch by email, updating me on Olivia's trust. "Untouchable," she wrote, confirming Vanessa had no legal grounds to contest it. "The bookstore lease is secured. All contracts are in order. Enjoy Italy." I replied with photos of cathedrals and plates of carbonara, thanking her for her patience. Joan, my neighbor, also wrote to me, sharing ideas for Helen's Corner, book clubs, poetry nights, a cozy cafe corner like Tom had suggested. "You're inspiring all of us," she wrote, and I pictured her smile as she planted tulips in the garden next to mine. These connections, Tom, Susan, Joan, were my new net, replacing the emptiness Vanessa had left behind. But Vanessa hadn't disappeared. Her messages came like sudden storms during the trip. "You ruined me, Kathy," one read, sent at 2 a.m., the typos hinting at rage or wine. "How am I supposed to live without that money? You're cruel." Other times it was manipulation, a softer tone in voicemail messages. "Kathy, I'm desperate. I just need a loan. For Olivia, for Mom." I deleted each one without replying, following Susan's advice. Don't give her room to pull you back in. Before we left Burlington, Vanessa had shown up at my door unannounced. Her blonde hair unbrushed, eyes red, a designer bag slung over. Her shoulder like a souvenir from a life she could no longer afford. "We need to talk," she said, voice teetering between pleading and demanding. Tom stood beside me, calm as a lake in contrast to her storm. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, keeping the door half open, my voice as steady as when I used to deliver tough diagnoses. "The trust is for Olivia. The money is gone for you," she exploded, hands trembling. "You think you're better than me, don't you? Perfect Kathy, stealing my future. I hate you, but I need you." Tears streamed down her face, but I saw through them. The same old performance. She used to talk her way into handouts. I started to close the door, but she held it, nails scratching the wood. "You can't do this. Think of Olivia." Using Olivia's name was a low blow, but I didn't budge. "Olivia is safe. You're not." Tom shut the door firmly, his hand on my shoulder as Vanessa's screams echoed down the street. "You'll pay for this, Kathy. This isn't over." But for me, it was. I blocked her number before we boarded the plane to Italy, a small act of self-preservation that allowed me to breathe. In Italy, I started shaping my future. I enrolled in an online small business course, getting ready for the bookstore. I wrote in a journal, not about Vanessa, but about me. The flavors of Italy, the feel of canvas beneath my brush, Tom's laughter echoing through cobbled streets. In Positano, I sat on a cliff, the sea glittering below, and painted a watercolor of the horizon, bolder colors than I used in Siena. It was clumsy, but it was mine. Back in Burlington, I'd hang those paintings on the bookstore walls, a reminder that I could create, not just fix. I also decided to volunteer at a community center, mentoring teens like Olivia, girls navigating unstable families. It was my way of honoring the promise I made to Mom without losing myself in the process. Protect. Olivia from afar, but finally live for me. Vanessa never showed up again, but I knew her shadow might return. Susan told me she had hired a lawyer, but the trust documents were airtight. She's bluffing, Susan assured me, and I believed her. Italy had taught me to let go, not just of Vanessa, but of the guilt I carried for not saving her. When we returned, the bookstore would take shape, its shelves filled with stories like the ones Mom used to read us. On our last night in Florence, Tom and I toasted with red wine, the Duomo glowing in the distance through the restaurant window. To Helen's Corner, he said, raising his glass. And to us. I smiled, the weight of years of sacrifice melting in the warmth of that moment. This life was mine now, and I would build it with the hands that once only held other people's promises. A year after Italy, I was inside Helen's Corner bookstore, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the smell of new books, as Joan hung an open sign in the window. The oak shelves installed just days earlier displayed novels, memoirs, and poetry, with a corner reserved for watercolor paintings I'd done in Tuscany. Winding hills and vibrant seas, each a marker of the woman I'd become. At 60, I was no longer just the sister who fixed everything. I was Catherine Walsh, bookstore owner, volunteer at a community center, and wife to Tom, who made espresso with a charm that rivaled the baristas in Florence. The shop, opened in Burlington with my share of the inheritance, had become a sanctuary, a place where women gathered to read and talk, just like Mom always dreamed. That trip to Italy had rekindled something in me. Walking through Rome with Tom, laughing in cooking classes, painting under the Positano sun, each moment taught me to live without the weight of Mom's promise. Back in Burlington, I made Helen's Corner a reality. Joan suggested poetry nights. Tom insisted on a coffee nook. Susan, my lawyer, made sure Olivia's trust fund remained untouched. Her emails confirmed that Vanessa had no way of challenging it. Vanessa, after all her manipulations before the trip, had vanished from my radar. Her texts stopped after I blocked her number. I thought she'd given up. But life, as I learned on countless hospital shifts, always holds surprises. The crisis came on a spring evening as I was arranging books for an upcoming event at the store. The phone rang, and Olivia's trembling voice broke the silence. "Aunt Kathy, it's me. I need help." My heart skipped. Olivia rarely called, and never sounding this desperate. Between pauses, she explained that after losing access to the inheritance, Vanessa had racked up debt, neglecting bills and Olivia's school. Days earlier, after a heated argument, Vanessa had walked out and hadn't come back. "She didn't come home," Olivia said, her voice cracking. "School suspended me for too many absences. The promise to Mom, take care of Nessa and Olivia, resurfaced, but with new clarity. It was Olivia who needed me, not Vanessa." "Stay right there," I said, grabbing my coat. "We're coming to Asheville." Tom, already holding the car keys, insisted on driving. "You keep your head clear. I've got the road," he said, his tone steady and kind. We drove the same highway I had once crossed years ago, this time under a clear sky, moonlight guiding the way. Tom kept the radio low, soft music filling the quiet as I imagined Olivia alone in Vanessa's flashy, crumbling home. We arrived at midnight. Olivia opened the door, taller than before, her eyes red. She hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you, Aunt Kathy." The house was a mess, dirty dishes in the sink, bills piled high, a sharp contrast to the image of wealth the inheritance once supported. In a corner of the living room, leaning against the wall, I saw the photo album I'd left at Vanessa's birthday. The tissue paper was torn, but it was still intact. I picked it up, feeling its weight, and sat Olivia down on the couch, pouring her tea as she spoke. She told me Vanessa had been cycling between rage and empty promises, disappearing for days, without a word. "She's not mean," Olivia said, wringing her hands. "She just doesn't know how to stop." Her words hurt, but they solidified my decision. Olivia deserved stability, even if Vanessa couldn't provide it. Vanessa came back the next morning, hair disheveled, a designer purse slung over her shoulder like a remnant of a life she could no longer afford. She froze when she saw me, her bag slipping to the floor. "Kathy, why are you here?" Her voice carried a mix of shock and resentment. Olivia stepped in, voice steady despite her tears. "I called her, Mom. You left me." Vanessa crumbled, shame twisting her face. I sat them both at the kitchen table, Tom beside me, and spoke with the calm of someone who no longer carried guilt that wasn't hers. "Vanessa, Olivia doesn't need promises. She needs you. You need help, therapy, maybe a program. I won't give you money, but I can point you toward help." Vanessa tried to protest, but Olivia's eyes, locked on hers, silenced her. I opened the album, flipping through until I found a letter from Mom I hadn't noticed before, tucked between two photos. "Dear Kathy and Nessa," it read, "take care of each other, not with money, but with love. Be strong together." I read it aloud, my voice shaking. Vanessa sobbed, covering her face. "I failed her," she whispered. "You, Olivia, everyone." I didn't console her. It wasn't my place. But I suggested family therapy, something Susan had mentioned. "For Olivia," I said firmly. Vanessa nodded slowly. A small step, but a real one. I brought Olivia back to Burlington with me, where she'd stay until Vanessa got on her feet. I enrolled her in the local school, using the trust fund to cover expenses, and began mentoring her at the community center, where she slowly opened up, laughing with other teens. Vanessa enrolled in a program in Asheville, and weeks later began working at an art gallery, a modest job that matched her flair but demanded responsibility. Her updates were brief, sent by email, but honest. Progress, not perfection. We weren't close sisters, and maybe we never would be, but a fragile respect began to form, like a seed in hard soil. For the grand opening of Helen's Corner, I invited Vanessa to a reading in honor of Mom. She came, quiet, reserved, and clapped when I read a passage from one of Mom's favorite books. We didn't talk much, but her gaze, less defensive, was enough. Weeks. Later, on a quiet afternoon, I picked out a novel from the shop, a story about second chances, its cover the same blue as the sea in Positano. I sent it to Olivia with a note, "For the future you choose." As I arranged books on the shelves, Joan suggesting new titles and Tom pouring coffee behind the counter, I looked out the window. Burlington's sky was glowing, and my life, like the bookstore, was an open space built with love, boundaries, and the courage to choose myself. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about love, strength, and second chances.